مجنونه الله 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 في الأيتام الله
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم لا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم حسبنا الله ونعم الوكيل نعم المولى ونعم النصير ثم الصلاة والسلام على سيدنا ونبينا أبي القاسم محمد وعلى أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين ولعنة الله على أعدائهم أجمعين من الأولين والآخرين آمين يا رب العالمين. أما بعد، قال الله تبارك وتعالى في كتابه الكريم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم يا أيها الذين آمنوا إن جاءكم فاسق بنبأ فتبينوا أن تصيبوا قوما بجهالة فتصبحوا على ما فعلتم نادمين. وأيضا قال الله تبارك وتعالى في كتابه الكريم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم قل هل ننبئكم بالأخسرين أعمالا الذين ضل سعيهم في الحياة الدنيا وهم يحسبون أنهم يحسنون صنعا. صدق الله العلي العظيم. السلام عليكم جميعا ورحمة الله وبركاته. So today we have a lot to go through because tomorrow is the last session and we want to try and finish up the whole discussion regarding Mukhtar and wire it back to our initial discussion. So please forgive me if I'm sort of a little bit more paced than I normally am, a little bit faster than I normally am in today's session. Also, today's musibah is for Abul Fadl al-Abbas, and this is a musibah that we can't really rush. So because of that, I will be a little bit faster, and I apologize for that in advance. So yesterday, we were discussing, I think the point at which we finished regarding Mukhtar was that Mukhtar has been told by Maysam Tammar that he will defeat Ubaydullah ibn Ziyad. This is, of course, he's being told in the prison. He will defeat Ubaydullah ibn Ziyad and he will trample upon his face. But at that time, Mukhtar needs to be extremely wary and careful because the line between his success and his eternal damnation, if you like, will be extremely thin. He'll be walking a very thin line. And we explained that the reason for this thin line is that when someone does something, such a huge act for Allah, for Ahlul Bayt, like destroying and ending those people who have actively done dhulm and done harm on Ahlul Bayt and on the oppressed people, then when you kill this person or when you bring this person to justice, there is a danger that Shaitan, as we have said, he will find vectors to attack you from. And Shaitan will use this as a vector to corrupt Mukhtar's intention. And Maysam Tammar is warning Mukhtar that when you are at that stage, be careful. Don't let Shaitan make you think that you did something amazing. You only managed to do what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave you the tawfiq to do. And if Allah hadn't given you tawfiq, there's nothing you could have done. You will rot in this jail. So moving on from there, Maysam was then taken out. He was taken before Ubaydullah ibn Ziyad, and it's actually very interesting, and it's a minor digression, but it's interesting for us to know why was Maysam in prison in the first place. Because Maysam was a companion of Amir al-Mu'mineen, a companion of Rasul. He was from the senior people within Islam. And such senior people, even Abdullah bin Afif, who we mentioned briefly, such senior people are normally not arrested and given a hard time. They are, if you like, by Taghut, like Banu Umayyah, or the Taghut of any time, such senior people, they are dealt with quietly in a more, shall we say, clandestine manner. The reason for Maytham being arrested is actually very important and ties in to this idea of Amr bil Ma'ruf, Nahi anil Munkar, speaking truth to power, that when information came about the murder of Abu Abdullah al-Hussein, Ubaidullah ibn Ziyad understood that if he didn't consolidate his power and this news came to the people from other sources, there was a danger that he would face a rebellion. So he had to control the narrative, as they say in these days, where the enemy needs to control the story that people are hearing, because if people actually hear the truth, then khalas, the enemy will be destroyed. So what Ubaidullah ibn Ziyad did, and these are lessons we should learn from. I'm not just telling the story so that we learn the story. That's of course got its own merit, but it's the lessons that are important. What Ubaidullah ibn Ziyad did was he climbed onto the mimbar in Masjid Kufa, and he was the governor of the Kufa, so he thought, technically he had the, quote, right to do this. And he started giving a majlis, giving a lecture. And inside this lecture, he was complaining and abusing and insulting about Abdullah al-Hussein, saying that Imam Hussein had come out in rebellion against Islam and he was an enemy of Islam. He had allied himself with Christians. Remember Wahhab al-Nasrani, Abdullah al-Nasrani, the one we mentioned a few nights ago? He was using this to tell the people or make the people feel that Imam Hussein had essentially left Islam. Listening to this, Maytham couldn't keep quiet. Everyone else in Masjid Kufa was silent, quietly listening. Only Maytham, imagine a very frail, old man. He was a farmer. He used to look after his date palm. He came out and he stood up amongst all of these people in Masjid Kufa, and he said, "How dare you say these lies about the beloved one of Rasulullah? How dare you say these lies?" And he gave a lot of fada'il of Abu Abdullah, fada'il of Amir al-Mu'mineen, fada'il of Rasulullah. And then he started saying what Yazid was and explaining to the people that this is the situation. Then he went on to explain who is Ubaidullah. Now, if you remember, one of the names that we called Ubaidullah ibn Ziyad was Ibn Marjana. Marjana is the name of a lady who was, the politest way I can say it is, she was a lady of ill repute among the Arabs. And there are various narrations as to what actually happened. Suffice it to say that she would provide services for money. And she had a child from one of these encounters. And according to some, the father was Abu Sufyan. According to others, it was someone else. It was someone called Ziyad. Who it was doesn't matter, but using this term, Ibn Marjana, calling an Arab man by the name of his mother when his mother is specifically known to be like this, implies that this person doesn't have a father. It's a very big insult. So Maysam explained all of this, and before Maysam could finish, Ubaidullah saw that this is going to create serious turmoil. And as Ubaidullah was storming out of Masjid Kufa, he got all of his soldiers, maybe 6, 7, maybe 10 soldiers, to take this tiny, frail man, beat him to within an inch of his life, and throw him in the dungeon, and then, punish him and, give him a trial and all of this stuff. And that is how Maytham came into the prison to give Mukhtar this information and why Maytham was quite heavily beaten. So that was just a minor digression to give you some background on why Maysam was there. Give me a salawat and we continue. So while Mukhtar is inside the prison, it's, we have to understand that Karbala has happened, he's in prison. The Sabaya have been taken from Kufa and Kufa to Sham. All of these things are happening. Mukhtar is still stuck inside prison, and there's very little he can do about it. In the end, he creates an opportunity by one of the guards gives him a little bit of support. According to some riwayat, this guard was a family member of his from the Banu Thaqif tribe. Because he was from the Thaqafi tribe, this guard was also somehow related to him. Others say that his wife, Umrah, managed to bribe or get someone to bribe a guard. The detail is not relevant. He managed to get a guard to take a letter on his behalf to Abdullah ibn Umar. Now, if you remember, Abdullah ibn Umar was the brother-in-law of Mukhtar. He was married to Mukhtar's sister, his eldest sister. In this letter, he explained to Abdullah ibn Umar that he's been incarcerated under the crime of leading a revolt, meaning leading the revolt that Muslim bin Aqil generated in Kufa. Mukhtar tells Abdullah ibn Umar that he was not responsible for this uprising in Kufa. He was actually outside Kufa, and he tells him that you can ask this tribe and this tribe and this tribe, and they will provide testimony. Now, this isn't Mukhtar trying to get away from his responsibility. He's actually stating a fact, because he was outside Kufa. And there's a maslaha in why he was outside Kufa, because there is, in everything that happens, we might see something happening as being very bad. We might see, for example, I'll give you an example, and again, minor digression, please forgive me. We have this year this situation of Corona. Now, personally, for me, at the beginning of the year, I was hoping to go to Iran to visit friends and for ziyarah and everything. Of course, this didn't happen because of Corona, alayhi salam. So what happened? We felt initially when we heard of Corona and all of this, everyone is under house arrest and, everyone is ill and this, that, and the other, the sky is falling. Everyone thought, this is really bad, this is like Yawm al-Qiyamah is coming, it's finished, it's khalas. I've had some brothers telling me that, Shabbir, this must be, Yawm al-Qiyamah. I said, Habib, Yawm al-Qiyamah, and this is nothing. This is a walk in park. Hey, wait, Yawm al-Qiyamah is something completely different. Everyone got upset about it. But the reality is that actually now look at us today. Today, in the month of Muharram, we have more zikr happening globally online about Imam al-Hussein than at any time in history, I believe. Everywhere. Even though, yes, we can't be together next to our brothers. But at the same time, we are together. All of us here, we are together in this majlis. And countless other majalis, even during this same time, before, after, throughout the day. So sometimes something happens and we think it's bad, but actually there's a good in it. And in the Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that sometimes that thing that you dislike is better for you. So moving on swiftly, Mukhtar had written this letter explaining to Abdullah ibn Umar. Now, Abdullah ibn Umar, being the son of Umar ibn al-Khattab, still carried some influence, carried some weight with all of the Khulafa. It was very difficult for all of the rulers and the elites, if you like. It's very difficult for these elites to turn around and totally ignore him. Even someone like Yazid, it's very difficult for him to ignore him. And that actually leads to the whole idea why Yazid was explicitly told by Muawiyah that when you start your reign, when you come into power after Muawiyah dies, then 3 people you need to secure allegiance from. Because if these 3 people work against you, you're finished. If even one of these people work against you, you're finished. So if they don't give you allegiance, then you have to kill them. One was Abdullah ibn Zubayr, who we will come to. The other one was Abdullah ibn Umar. And of course, Hussein ibn Ali. Now, as a result of this, Abdullah ibn Umar had given a sort of weak allegiance to Yazid, in the sense that he was not going to oppose him. He was saying that I'm just a spiritual person now, my Islam is in my heart, type of thing. And he continued to go about his own business. He stayed in Mecca, but he still had influence. So when he received Mukhtar's letter, his wife, of course, must have spoken to him and discussed with him. And Abdullah ibn Umar had respect for Mukhtar. He knew Mukhtar was an honest and an honorable man. And of course, it was Ubaidullah ibn Ziyad who had imprisoned Mukhtar, not Yazid explicitly. Now, this is very interesting because you see how the enemies go back on each other. At this time, there is already a minor outcry among the people that, what has Yazid done? He has killed Imam Hussein, the son of Fatima al-Zahra. There is like rumblings. It's not a full-blown revolution, no, not even close. But there are rumblings among people. Many people are disappointed. Many people are questioning Yazid. Of course, because of his behavior, his activities, his constant reliance on someone called Abu Ghayth. And when you understand who Abu Ghayth was, he was a monkey, literally a physical monkey, a primate. And this was known as Yazid's chief advisor in Damascus. So because of all of these, issues, shall we say, that Yazid had, there was already rumblings against him. And so he needed to keep people on side. So when Abdullah ibn Umar tells Yazid that, look, Mukhtar, my brother-in-law, has been imprisoned by your agent, Ubaidullah ibn Ziyad. And Ubaidullah ibn Ziyad, you're saying that he's done something wrong. Because one of the things Yazid was doing is he was offsetting the blame, saying that I didn't kill Imam Hussein, it was Ubaidullah ibn Ziyad. And if you listen to discussions between Shimr and Umar ibn Sa'ad, which maybe we will come to if we get time, you will see that each one of them was pointing the finger at the other. None of them was ready to take that responsibility, even though collectively they were fully and totally responsible. Because of this political maneuvering that Abdullah ibn Umar, or rather Mukhtar, did through Abdullah ibn Umar, a letter was sent, an edict, a fatwa, if you like, from a hukum, actually, higher than a fatwa, was sent by Yazid to Ubaidullah ibn Ziyad in Kufa, from Damascus to Kufa, saying that you have to release Mukhtar. You have to release Mukhtar immediately. He was not responsible, and Yazid the Khalif is saying, I know he was not responsible, so you have to free him. When Ubaidullah ibn Ziyad receives this letter, of course he realizes what's happened, and he knows that he is being, laid out to take the blame for all of this. And he feels hard done by. But of course, he has to listen to the person that's given him that kursi, the fact that he's the governor of Kufa. He's only the governor of Kufa because he was appointed by Ubaidullah ibn Ziyad, by Yazid. So he agrees. He says, fine, we will free Mukhtar. He calls Mukhtar to the court, and he, tells him, you're free to go, and this, that, and the other. But he tells Mukhtar that I'm not just setting you free so you can stay in Kufa and you can turn around and create all sorts of rebellion and all sorts of problems for me. No, I'm going to make sure that you become something we call exiled. You're forced to leave Kufa, and you can't come into Kufa for the next, I think they gave a number, maybe 10, 20 years. At this point, as Mukhtar is in the presence of Ubaidullah ibn Ziyad, the two criminals, Shimr bin Dhil Jawshan and Umar ibn Sa'ad, turn up. Now, I don't know if I'd mentioned before, but Umar ibn Sa'ad was also Mukhtar's brother-in-law, because he was married to Mukhtar's younger sister. And this gives you an idea of how small the community is at that time, and how how all of these people actually know each other, and how such people who have closeness and who have people in their families of the caliber of Mukhtar, but also have people in their families of the caliber of Umar ibn Sa'ad and Shimr bin Dhil-Jawshan. So as Mukhtar is leaving, Mukhtar sees these two as he's coming out, and he says to them, he doesn't say anything to them, he just looks at them and spits in their direction and walks away. He doesn't he doesn't speak to them. But he makes them know that their days are numbered and the proverbial writing is on the wall. These two people run to Ubaydullah ibn Ziyad and say, what have you done? Have you gone nuts? Are you crazy? You've released someone who is going to be the end of all of us. They realized what Mukhtar can do. They knew that Mukhtar is someone serious, and they realized what a damaging to themselves crime they had done in Karbala. According to some riwayat, it says that Umar ibn Sa'ad had actually gone completely crazy, because one of the reasons why he had agreed to run the army was that Yazid had offered him something called the Kingdom of Ray. What is the Kingdom of Ray? It's the kingdom of what we today know as Tehran in Iran. He was told that, I will give you this Kingdom of Ray, and his wife was very excited by it, that, I will be a princess and all of this sort of stuff. Dunya. And Imam Hussein had told him that you won't even taste the wheat of Ray. This is a promise I'm giving you. Anyway, so these two went to Ubaydullah ibn Ziyad and they said, look, you can't do this. You can't free him. Go and have him arrested again. So Ubaydullah tells them that, look, it's out of my hands. I have a letter, I have an instruction from Yazid. I can't go against that. So they said, well, what do we do? He said, well, I can't do anything. Ubaydullah is saying, I can't do anything. But, you people are independent agents. So if some sort of issue was to happen to Mukhtar on his way out of town, well, if it was after the 3 days of time I've given him to get his affairs into order, I'm not going to go, I'm not going to do anything to you. So then these two criminals, they decide that they have no choice. They have to murder Mukhtar. I'm going to rush through this bit because I think everyone understands that, of course, this assassination attempt failed. And Mukhtar was, of course, liberated. Give me a salawat. So at this point, Mukhtar can't stay in Kufa. He has to leave, and we'll skim over the assassination attempt. But then he decides to go to Mecca. And this is very interesting. Now, Mecca, if you understand times in those times, Mecca was like the center of the Muslim world. Every Muslim town, city, locality, province, people would constantly be going in and out of Mecca. They would be coming for Hajj or Umrah. They would also be coming for trade. And you would have trade caravans meeting. They would be exchanging, goods, buying, selling, and then going for example, from Yemen all the way to Syria, from, for example, the southern parts of Arabia, or from Africa, like Egypt and stuff, all the way to places like Iran. So it was like a central hub. So because of that, and this hub was controlled by the Zubayris, who I've mentioned earlier. These are the descendants of Zubayr, of Talha and Zubayr fame. And actually, the person in power is Abdullah ibn Zubayr, who, as I'd mentioned again in one of the earlier lectures, is the son of Zubayr, who actually killed Zubayr when Zubayr had decided that he doesn't want to go against Imam Ali in the Battle of Jamal. So this is a very evil person. The Zubayris are not good. They were not good people. They were, according to some, worse than the Umayyads, according to others, no less than. The Khawarij were also in Mecca because Mecca was a safe haven, it was a sanctuary, everyone could go there, and the Khawarij also existed in Mecca. So Mukhtar is going literally from Kufa into Mecca, but Mecca has become like this belly of all different groups and all different problems. Now, one of the things that Mukhtar wanted to do is he needed to understand what the political situation was at the time. And this is an important lesson for us. Before Mukhtar acted, before he arranged all the people, got his colleagues, and got all the believers together and all of this, before he did all of that, he did a lot of research. He looked at every single possible enemy to gauge what is the risk that this enemy poses in achieving my objective. And what is the objective? The objective is to finish Yazid and those people who were instrumental and responsible in the killing of Imam al-Hussein and the companions and family. He had a specific task. But on top of that, he didn't just want to kill these people and khalas. No. He wanted to finish these people, remove the Umayyad influence from that region, create a government, but not so that it can become the Mukhtari government. No. His intention, and he had conveyed this to Imam Sajjad through Muhammad bin Hanafiya, as we've discussed also before, he wanted to give this government as a gift to Imam Sajjad, so that Imam Sajjad could then govern over the people by the same way as Amir al-Mu'mineen and Rasulullah had done. This was the underlying intention. But very few people were privy to that information. And this is another important point for us. When we are working for Islamic activities, sometimes you don't need to tell everyone what you're doing. Sometimes you have to keep things to yourself until that time is appropriate. And there's many reasons for this. It's possible you may not achieve that. It's entirely possible when Mukhtar was doing his research, his reconnaissance, his due diligence, if you like, he maybe realized that actually this could be problematic. There isn't enough support. Or the enemies, the Zubayris or the Umayyads or the X or the Y, they're all too strong. And so it's not possible. And so instead of taking 5 years, it's going to take 50 years. And by 50 years, it may not be feasible, maybe 100 years. So there's a lot of reasons why something may not come. So you keep a very small group of people who you work with directly. And this is what Mukhtar did. He had a handful of people that he went to. And these were people in Kufa. I wish I could sit and explain to you about each one of these. But unfortunately, time is literally, I speak a sentence, I look at the watch, and I'm seeing that time is just running at a pace that I can't keep up with. So give me a salawat and we'll try and continue. So Mukhtar, once he was in Mecca, after he did his initial Hajj and everything, immediately, of course, the Zubayris were keeping an eye. Now, Mukhtar also had been to see Muhammad bin Hanafiya and through him Imam Sajjad in Mecca, which is where they were based. And while technically they were not under house arrest, they were under constant observation. So Mukhtar had to be very cautious about when he went, how he dressed when he went to see Imam, so that no one would be aware that this person is going to see Imam. And even when he went inside to visit Imam, he didn't actually explicitly meet with Imam because that was not entirely possible. Rather, he met with Muhammad bin Hanafiya and he explained to him what his agenda was, what he wanted to do, and more than anything, he explained, this is why I'm over here. And as part of this mission, I may need to feign an alliance, feign being pretend, an alliance with the Zubayris. And this, he gave a lot of detail to Muhammad bin Hanafiya, who of course passed it on to Imam Sajjad. And Muhammad bin Hanafiya gave him the permission. Of course, this is the permission from Imam Sajjad. When I say Muhammad bin Hanafiya, I'm saying it's like, for example, it's like when the marja gives you a permission to do something, it's actually Imam al-Hujjah that's giving that permission. The same way, when Muhammad bin Hanafiya gave him the permission to do such and such activity, marja or wali, to do this activity, but of course with conditions and being cautious, and I'm really rushing through this, so you'll have to forgive my briefness on these ideas. So he took the permission, he was given this permission with many conditions and everything. And then as he was just sitting in the precincts of Masjid al-Haram, one of the agents of Abdullah bin Zubayr came to him and he said that His Excellency the Khalif Abdullah ibn Zubayr wishes to meet with you, wishes to see you. So Mukhtar went to see him, and there's a whole load of different strange situations. The personality of Abdullah bin Zubayr, I wish I could describe this in detail, but really we don't have the time. Suffice it to say that Abdullah ibn Zubayr was a very vicious person. He was someone who had an inbuilt hatred. And on that note of hatred, I want to clarify one thing which I've said in the previous lectures. I had said in one of the previous lectures that we as Muslims, we don't necessarily, tabarra does not mean to hate. And that's true. Tabarra does not mean to hate. But we as Muslims, we have to have enmity with those people who are enemies of justice, of truth, and who are taghut, who are oppressors. Enmity, in my opinion, is still different to hatred. Hatred, like I said, it's like love. When you hate someone, you're thinking about them all the time. I don't consider the enemy to be important enough for me to worry about all the time. However, at the same time, I have to be fully aware of what the enemy is doing, what games the enemy is playing, what noises the enemy is doing, what propaganda the enemy is generating. Because if I don't know that, then the enemy has an advantage over me. If you look at how the Islamic resistance in Lebanon operates, they know more about what's happening inside occupied Palestine than even the people who are occupying Palestine do. They have great information about what's going on, and the Zionists, they know that the resistance is aware. The same time when they were fighting Daesh, be it in Arsal, be it in Syria, they were ahead of the game. They knew more information about what was going on. And this is why they were able to prevail. So in this scenario, and sorry for that minor digression, but I had to make that very clear. I didn't want anyone to think that Shabbir is saying you mustn't hate. No. Tabarra is not hatred. But in terms of having enmity towards the enemies, of course, we have to have this. This is necessary. So, you had Mukhtar going to visit Abdullah ibn Zubayr. And Abdullah ibn Zubayr said to him, look, Mukhtar, I need someone with your credentials, with your power at running an army. Mukhtar was known as a powerful general. And there was a danger, to set some more context, that Yazid was sending an army to Hijaz to basically remove the Zubayris from power. He had finished with Imam Hussein and Karbala, and he had pacified Abdullah ibn Umar. So now he wanted to take over Mecca and Medina. So Yazid had already sent an army to Medina, and they had ransacked Medina. They had ransacked Masjid al-Haram, Masjid al-Nabawi. They had put their monkeys. Abu Ghayth apparently had been dancing upon the mimbar of Rasulullah in Medina, and many, many other atrocities that I will not mention right now. Abdullah bin Zubayr was concerned because Medina was part of his area, part of his responsibility, and he had, of course, failed in his responsibility to protect it. This also gave a big shake to his position as a Khalif, because one of the duties of the Khalif is to protect the lands of the Muslims, and he had, of course, failed in this. Now, when you look at this position of Abdullah ibn Zubayr, he's weakened as a monarch, as a king, as a leader. We'll call him a king just for the sake of simplicity. He was extremely weakened. He was fragile, and he needed a strong general like Mukhtar, because on the other side, on Yazid's side, information had already reached him that the general in charge of the army was a famous warrior by the name of Hussein ibn Numayr. And Hussein ibn Numayr was known to be extremely devious and very clever in terms of war planning and laying siege to a city and all of this stuff. So he needed to convince Mukhtar to be a part of his system so that Mukhtar can run one of the flanks. Was this because the Zubayri Khalif was alone? No, he wasn't completely alone. He had his brother, Mus'ab. He had other brothers, Ja'far, and I can't remember the name of the third one. But these people, one of his brothers was in Basra, and he was trying to keep things settled in Basra. And the other brothers were, I think, the easiest and simplest way that everyone can understand, and I can explain, is that they were nice but dim. They were not the best strategists. They were not the best generals. They were very, jazbati, very emotional people, but they weren't particularly intelligent when it came to matters of politics and war. So Mukhtar was necessary. So Abdullah ibn Zubayr began to talk to Mukhtar and said, why have you come over here and this. And Mukhtar, I'm really missing a whole load of stuff in this, so please forgive me. And I've already spoken to the organizers that I think everyone should actually watch the epic series that Islamic Republic of Iran has made about Mukhtar, because it covers a lot more of this in so much more detail than I have any hope of covering. And perhaps when you watch it, have discussions with your families, because you will learn these lessons. Some of these lessons I'm giving you, maybe when you watch the series, they will become that much clearer to you. So give me a salawat and we'll try and continue. Okay. So, Mukhtar was finally, he agreed, in inverted commas, to work with the Zubayris. He even brought the Khawarij into the camp, which for Mukhtar, who is the lover of Amir al-Mu'mineen, this itself is a big deal. For him to take this much pain and work with the same criminals who were responsible for the killing of Imam Ali. But he did this for the greater purpose, and also because when he gave his allegiance to the Zubayri Khalif, he made a condition. And that condition was that I want the kingdom, remember these words, I want the kingdom of Iraq. He had no intention. We've already discussed what his agenda was. I've explained this to you. But he wanted to make sure that Kufa would not be within the hands of Abdullah ibn Zubayr. And if the Umayyads still controlled it, he would have access to an army to clean Kufa from the Umayyad agents and occupation. So then, of course, there was a great army that was coming, and it was reaching the gates of Mecca. And this army, like I said, was headed by Hussein ibn Numayr. So the Zubayris, along with Mukhtar, went to face them. went outside to face them. And Mukhtar's entire position was that we should face them outside in the desert so that the civilians are not harmed. He wanted to make sure there would be no civilian casualties in Mecca. There would be no harm to the civilians in the little villages and townships around Mecca, and that the fight happens in the desert. Khalas. The Zubayri Khalif wanted the opposite, and his generals, in inverted commas, his brothers, they all were suggesting that if we fight in the streets, then it's easier because, we can defeat them and we can confuse them. Now, this leads to an important idea. We as Muslims, as the resistance, inshallah, people, we have always, by the enemy, been accused of this concept of human shields. That these people, Iran, Hizb, etc., they're always using human shields. Syria, human shields. Everyone is using human shields. No. We know for a fact that it is the enemy that uses this mentality of harming civilians. In Islam, in any battle situation, you look at the rules of jihad, of the active jihad, you cannot harm civilians. You can't harm a tree. You can't harm an ant that's walking past the battlefield. There are strict laws, and we need to remember this. And this is, again, to counter all of this negative. I don't like the term Islamophobia because I don't think it's a fear. I think it's a hatred of Islam that's been embedded into the minds of people by those people who have a very serious problem. Khulasa, I have to move very quickly. So the battle happens, and in the battle, one of the brothers of Abdullah ibn Zubayr is killed. Many of the famous fighters are killed. Mukhtar is, of course, instrumental in the battle. And there is a hiatus in the battle. The army comes back. The army of Ubaydullah ibn Ziyad comes back. The army of Yazid is wounded. They feel very wounded. So that night, when everyone is sleeping, the army of Yazid, remember Yazid had connections with the Romans, with the Roman Empire. And the Roman empires would give him things like trebuchets and other siege weaponry. And so they had some, we call them in Farsi manjanik. I think the closest in English translation is like a catapult, right? And they started pummeling Masjid al-Haram with fireballs. So basically balls made out of dirt, but with oil inside them and wrapped in oil, set on fire, and then shot like a catapult, with a catapult to harm the Kaaba. This is an important lesson. So this starts Mukhtar and all of the other soldiers, because it's only a hiatus in the battle. The next day the battle is supposed to continue back at the battlefield. This is how battles were constructed over there in those days. All of a sudden, you see these huge fireballs falling into the ground. And you see Kaaba begins to burn, and there's smoke and noise. Khawarij are like, everyone is shell-shocked. No one understands what to do. Mukhtar immediately, once he realizes what's going on, because of course he's a human being as well, he got shocked as well that, whoa, what's happening over here? Because the last thing you expect is for a Muslim to attack Kaaba. Remember this. Mukhtar starts telling people, go to the Zamzam, get water and try and douse the flames. Come on, try and douse the flames. And he looks up and he sees where the Zubayri Khalif's house is. And he sees the Zubayri Khalif, and this guy is laughing like a crazy, evil monster type of laugh. And he's saying, this, let it burn, Mukhtar. Don't put the fire out. Mukhtar is saying, are you on drugs? What's wrong with you? We have to put the fire out. No, this fire is a testament of the kufr of Yazid. It shows that Yazid is kafir. Anyway, with that point, I will really zoom ahead quite a bit. Mukhtar makes sure the fire is put out, but then at that point, when he realizes that there is no hope in Mecca for any sort of reformation, but given that the battle is won, Yazid died the next day or Actually, Yazid died maybe a month before, but by the time the information came, they received it on the day after the attack on the Kaaba. So everyone was thinking that, oh, Yazid died because he attacked the Kaaba and everything, which is also a nice thing to remember. That you attack the Kaaba and news of your death will come, news of your destruction. And how Yazid died, this is another discussion which we're not going to go into. So then Mukhtar needs to leave. The Zubayri Khalif comes to him and he says, Mukhtar, you've done wonderfully. You should accept your gift. And he says to him that I'm giving you the kingdom of Iraq. To which Mukhtar turns around and says, yeah, I don't want it. And he leaves. This confuses them because they have then realized that Mukhtar has actually just used them. Mukhtar has used them the same way they wanted to use Mukhtar. And they know Mukhtar is more dangerous now because Mukhtar was privy to all of their private information at that time. He was an inside man, if you like. Moving very swiftly on, Mukhtar goes to Lafqa first, which is where he has a house. Lafqa is a small village on the outskirts of Kufa. It's very fertile land and it's got many rivers around it. Over there, he sends letters and communications to many people, including, I'm really skipping such a huge amount over here, and I apologize, but really I don't have the time, especially with the musibah. So please forgive me. Give me a salawat, please. So Khulasa, Mukhtar, after bringing a number of people into the ranks of the Qiyam, the people who want to make the revolution, beginning to prepare everything, including documenting the Qiyam, as in having a person who will be writing the chronicles of what actually happened, one of the people through whom we have information about this, as well as other narrators. Mukhtar had gone and spoken to many of the elders from the various tribes in Kufa, including Sulaiman ibn Surad. He had sent letters to all of these people, but not everyone responded. One person he sent a letter to was the son of Malik Ashtar. This is Ibrahim. Now, someone might ask that Malik Ashtar was such a close companion of Amir al-Mu'mineen, and yet how is it that Ibrahim, son of Malik Ashtar, who was also someone who was very close to Ahlul Bayt, why is it that he's still alive when this event in Ashura has happened, when he, of course, would have known what's going on? Well, it turns out, according to some of the narrations, some say that he had some sort of illness in his leg like polio, or some sort of paralysis that prevented him from going to the battle. But of course, being the son of Malik al-Ashtar, he was very, very special. But the tragedy of Ibrahim was that Ibrahim, because he knew about Karbala, he had found out that this has happened. The guilt of not being there, even though it was by way of ijbariya, he was compelled not to be there, he couldn't because he was unwell. Physically, he couldn't stand. He still felt heartbroken with what's going on. And especially as we go through, and today the musibah is going to roll directly. It's not going to be a split musibah. I'm not going to stop. I'm just going to go straight into the musibah. Because today the musibah of Abul Fadl Abbas is going to be from Ibrahim ibn Malik Ashtar. What he narrates to Mukhtar and beyond. So Ibrahim was heartbroken about Karbala. He was a little bit, how do I say, he was a little bit limp in terms of he was walking with a limp. He was not stable. He was sad. He was a shadow of the person he was during the time of Amir al-Mu'mineen and during the time of his father. And he was one day sitting by the banks of a river near his house, not Alqama, but a river near his house. And I want you to picture this. He's sitting at this bank and he's crying and he's devastated and he wants to do something to help. And he hears someone with a horse. He hears the horse coming by. And the horseman says to him, are you the keeper of this well? Are you the keeper of this river? And he looks at him and he says, Abbas, it's me. So the horseman says to him, who are you? He says, it's me, it's Ibrahim, the son of Malik Ashtar. So Abbas looks at him and says, what a shame. What a shame that the son of Malik Ashtar is here while his master Hussein is in the caravan of love. Why is it that you didn't come? And listen to this if you can bear it. Ibrahim says, I wanted to, but my legs let me down. I wanted to, but I didn't have the ability. Al-Abbas says to the horseman, of course it's Al-Abbas in this vision. Al-Abbas says to him, come take my hand. Come take my hand, I will take you. And Ibrahim is trying to take the hand. The vision goes away and he falls into the water. His brother catches him. Ajrakum ala Allah. So this is Ibrahim, the son of Malik al-Ashtar. He is approached by Mukhtar, just like Mukhtar approached all of the senior people, but Ibrahim was special because of who he was. He was the son of Malik. If he came on side with Mukhtar, then this would make all of the Shia essentially, except some who are still a little bit stubborn, and we'll come to them tomorrow. All of the Shia essentially would be with Mukhtar, would be with this revolution to avenge the blood of Imam al-Hussein, because the slogan of the entire revolution of Imam Hussein was Ya li tharat al-Hussein, that oh, for the vengeance, for the avenging of the blood of Imam al-Hussein. So a letter comes, and by this time the Zubayris have already taken authority, because when Mukhtar came to Kufa, he was not a Zubayri representative. The Zubayris needed to consolidate their power. The Umayyads, Ubaydullah ibn Ziyad had to run out of Kufa in a sheepskin. Pretending he was a sheep, he was herded out by some corrupt farmers. But again, khalas, unfortunately, time doesn't let us go into this in more detail. So the Zubayris are in power in Kufa, but Mukhtar needs the support of all of the Shia of Kufa. Of course, in order to make a revolution, you need to have the people's support. He sends this letter to Ibrahim, and again, there's a long story about this. Initially, Ibrahim is skeptical, but then he talks to Mukhtar, he looks at Mukhtar, he realizes the sincerity, he realizes who the letter is from. The letter was from Muhammad bin Hanafiya, and the name Muhammad bin Hanafiya used in the letter to Mukhtar was different to the name he used for when he wrote to Ibrahim, and this is what the confusion was created. I really wish I could discuss this because there's many lessons there, but time. Inshallah, we can discuss it at a future stage, or we'll try and cover it some tomorrow. So then Ibrahim agrees to go with Mukhtar, and they meet together in Lafqa. Now, these are the two heroes of this qiyam, of this revenge, this minor revenge that they gave to the enemies of Allah. Of course, the final revenge for Karbala, which is against all of the Taghut from the beginning till the end, is for Imam al-Hujjah. And inshallah, Allah gives us the sharaf and the honor to be in some way part of that team of Imam al-Hujjah that will do this activity. So Mukhtar and Ibrahim are together, and this is before they've gathered the troops and worked out the date and time and how they're going to do the qiyam. They just know that there is a qiyam going to happen and they're going to move forward. So they decide, actually Mukhtar says to Ibrahim that where do we go now? So Ibrahim says to him that my horse only knows one place on autopilot, and that's Karbala. It doesn't know how to get anywhere else unless I take it. And Mukhtar says, well, my horse doesn't really know how to get anywhere, but it knows that it's got a big job ahead of it. So they travel together towards Karbala. Now I want you to picture yourselves in Karbala and listen to what Ibrahim is saying. Listen to what Ibrahim is saying. They arrived at Karbala and they're standing by the stream known as Alqama. Sallallahu alayka ya mawlaya ya Aba Abdullah. Sallallahu alayka ya mawlaya ya ibn Rasulillah. Ibrahim is telling Mukhtar, this is Alqamah. This is the place where they say. This is the place where they say, Abul Fadl al-Abbas came to get the water. Mukhtar says to him, you and Abbas, you were close friends, weren't you? Ibrahim replies, Abbas and myself, we spent our youth together. In the famous Battle of Siffin, we were together in the tents. We would share tents and we would spend the night talking and dreaming. Abbas, of course, they were very young. Abbas wanted to become so strong that he would inherit the Dhul Fiqar of Imam Ali. And really, Abbas, he understood the loneliness of Amir al-Mu'mineen. He wanted, and this is what Abul Fadl Abbas would say he wanted to become so strong that Imam Ali could say, I have no need for an army. Abbas, for me, is enough like an army. He's enough, he's an army in himself. Ibrahim continues, says, in those days we were children, and the elders in matters of battle, they didn't really take us too seriously. And this used to upset Abbas very much. And one day he finally ran out of patience and he asked my father, Malik, because Malik was the general of Imam Ali. He went to Malik and he said, Malik, today you have to take me into the battlefield. Malik looks at him with a smile, laughs gently, and he says, nothing. Abbas becomes frustrated and angry, and like a lion he roars, Malik, do you think that I'm weaker than you? I'm ready to even wrestle with you. And if I win, then you have to take me into the battlefield. Malik laughs once more. Abbas gets even more angry and says, Malik, I'm not making jokes. Why are you laughing at me? Please stop laughing. Malik at this point stops laughing and he smiles and he looks at Abbas and he says, my dear Abbas, I know that you can fight and that you are a brave warrior, but you also know that you are Qamar Bani Hashim. You are the moon of Banu Hashim, and you need to stay alive and light up these dark nights of Siffin. When Al-Abbas heard this explanation, he became quiet. Ibrahim continues, he says that when Al-Abbas reached the stream of Alqama, he was very thirsty. Remember, no one has had water for 3 days, and they have been busy, they have been active, they have many people to look after. Al-Abbas was very thirsty, but he didn't drink even one drop from that water. Ibrahim continues and he recollects a memory that he has about Al-Abbas. He says one night in the tent in Siffin, they used to sleep in the same tent. Abbas jumped out of his bed. Abbas was looking at his hands, and then he was looking at me, Ibrahim is narrating. Ibrahim says to him, did you have a dream? Abbas nods. Ibrahim asks him, what did you see? And Abul Fadl Abbas replies, Ibrahim, I saw a dream that I don't have any hands, that my hands have been lost. And I was rushing around looking for my hands when I saw a bird, maybe a vulture, and it had my hands in its beak and it wanted to eat my hands. Ibrahim, I wanted to pick up a stone to throw at the bird, but I had no hands. I had no hands to pick up the stone with. I shouted at the bird and I said, "Oh vulture, oh buzzard, don't eat my hands. They're my hands. I need my hands." The vulture looked at Al-Abbas and he said, "Oh Abbas, why do you need these hands when you have these two glorious wings? I am hungry and my wings are broken and I can't fly. Your hands will fill me and give me energy, and you can fly with your beautiful wings. Go and fly with your wings." And then Ibrahim says, and think about this, "When I heard that the enemy had cut both of Al-Abbas's hands, I realized the wisdom and the meaning of this dream." Moving to the musibah properly, Ajrukum ala Allah, it is narrated that when Al-Abbas reached the banks of Al-Qamah, like we said, he was very thirsty, but he never drank. He had a mission, which was to get water for the tent of Abu Abdullah al-Hussein. But he saw the water, this cold water, and he gave a poem. He said something. In Arabic, it sounds so much better, but I'll say the translation in English. He says, my soul, you must be preceded by Hussein, and you must not continue to exist after him. Al-Hussein is about to drink from the cup of death, while you want to drink from this cold water? No, by Allah, this is against my way. And he refused to drink. After this great activity, that is something in itself that can be discussed for many hours, Al-Abbas filled the water bag that he had with him. And he made a move towards the camp of Abu Abdullah al-Hussein. I want you to imagine, you have this man, Abu al-Fadl al-Abbas, this handsome man. When you look at him, you see the noor like the Qamar of Bani Hashim. He gets the water, puts it in the water sack, climbs on his horse, and he's going back towards the camp of Abu Abdullah. Of course, the enemies, they are petrified. They are terrified. Ajrakum Allah. The enemies are terrified. The enemies surround him from every side. They have to prevent him from taking water into the camp of Abu Abdullah al-Hussein. They attack him from every angle because they know if this water gets to Imam al-Hussein, even though it's one bag of water, even this they are terrified about. But Al-Abbas was someone who the enemy could not cope with, and even he would look in their direction, they would become terrified. The enemies would not even be able to come near him because he was like Amir al-Mu'mineen, like Ali. He was the son of al-Baneen. This is not some ordinary person. This is Abu al-Fadl al-Abbas. However, one of these filthy hypocrites of Kufa ambushed him from behind a date palm, it said, and fired an arrow. And the arrow hit his arm, and then he came and he cut his right arm. Abu al-Fadl al-Abbas didn't care. He didn't care. He continued. He had a mission, and he was not going to let the loss of his arm stop him. He didn't care. He moved on. And he said, and again in Arabic, this sounds so much more beautiful, but I have to say it in English. He said, by Allah, if you cut my right hand, I will continue defending my religion. And the truthful Imam, who is the son of the purest of prophets. A moment later, another man, another zalim, another munafiq from another tree struck Al-Abbas on the left-hand side, and he cut his hand. And at this point, even though he was bleeding, Abu al-Fadl al-Abbas grabbed the water skin and he took it inside his teeth. Ajrakum ala Allah. And he tried to move with his legs. He pushed on the horse to try and get to the camp sooner and to bypass them. And then, as he's doing this, one of these zalimeen took a spear and aimed it directly at the water skin that Al-Abbas was carrying. which caused the water to flow onto the ground. Seeing this, the heart of Abbas was broken. He didn't know how to react. He's someone, he didn't want to return to the tent empty-handed and disappoint the children of Imam al-Hussein. He fell to the ground and he said, Assalamu alayka ya Aba Abdullah. As the Imam, and remember the Imam, as the Imam heard this cry of Al-Abbas, he ran towards Alqamah, to where Abbas had fell. He pushed his way through the troops and threw himself on the body of his brother. And he said that my spine is now broken and I have lost everything. Nothing, no matter how much we try, we cannot describe this loss for Abu Abdullah. Because this was his alamdar. Imam Hussein didn't initially want to allow Abbas to go. Abbas had been asking many, many times, please let me go. Imam Hussein would say, no, you are my support. You are my alamdar. You are the one who carries my flag. I cannot let you go. But it came a time where this was inevitable. وَسَيَعْلَمُ الَّذِينَ ظَلَمُوا أَيَّ مُنْقَلَبٍ يَنْقَلِبُونَ إِنَّا لِلَّهِ وَإِنَّا إِلَيْهِ رَاجِعُونَ رِضًا بِقَضَائِهِ وَتَسْلِيمًا لِأَمْرِهِ. Ya Allah, we ask you to accept our small ibadat, our small azah. Ya Allah, we ask you to give us the insight, the knowledge, the basira, and the belief, and the bravery of Abu al-Fadl al-Abbas. Ya Allah, make us such people that serve our Imam the way that Abu al-Fadl al-Abbas served his Imam. Let us be inspired by Abu al-Fadl al-Abbas. Ya Allah, please protect Islam and Muslimin across the world. Ya Allah, please destroy the enemy, the Taghut, the Munafiqeen, the Kuffar. Ya Allah, please protect all of the Muslims, especially in places like Palestine, in Yemen, in Kashmir, and across the world who are suffering. Ya Allah, please protect all of the righteous believers. Ya Allah, please release and give solace and calmness to all of those righteous ulama who are illegally incarcerated by the enemy, such as Shaykh Ibrahim Zakzaki and Shaykh Ali Salman and others. Ya Allah, we ask you to protect all of the believers across the world. Ya Allah, we ask you to protect all of the righteous ulama, all of the righteous maraja, and especially the leader Imam al-Khamenei. And Ya Allah, please hasten the return of Hadrat Baqiyatullah and make us from those people who keep him happy, who make him happy, and who are honored with serving in his path. وآخر الدعوانا عن الحمد لله رب العالمين والسلام عليكم جميعا ورحمة الله وبركاته.